So I have some questions that I was going to moderate like a talk and have some questions for both of these wonderful, talented women about their art career and about what their projects are about. And I guess we can just start, and I want to hear your stories. Like, you know, how did you come to make art your career? Sheli, I'm putting you on the spot first.
I don't know, I still feel like I'm a little kid, like, every day. So that question kind of catches me off guard. I think it was more about not pursuing any other career. So I met you, and I could work with artists, and I could talk to them about their work and how to make their work, and that could inspire me to make my work. And so I think it was just kind of something I fell into while pursuing it at the same time.
Yeah, but you were going to CSUN and you were already creating art before you met me.
So maybe it's just a disconnect between that word career. Like,
yeah, that could be.
But yeah, no, and I don't mean to say that like I'm not doing it. It's just not something that I feel like I'm like, oh, I'm actively doing this thing. It's making it my life.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, which is a good way of putting it, for sure. Catherine. Now, do you like to go by Catherine or Miss Art World?
Catherine's fine.
Okay.
I think for me, I definitely I came out trying to draw on walls when I was little. I got in trouble for drawing under the coffee tables. So for me, it was definitely, I was wanting to be an artist since I was little. I was diagnosed with an eye disease in 5th grade, and at the same time in junior high I took an art class, and my art teacher said, well, you can't be an artist because you are eventually going to go blind. So I stopped doing art for a really long time, and then got back into it when I was 17 and thought I knew everything, which was a good moment. But then after that, it was just everything in my life was about art. I went to school for art, I worked at a gallery, and everything is just art all the time.
I mean, you know, I think for a lot of artists, we just become immersed in it. You know, even like a lot of artists I know in day jobs, they're in art too. And I know a lot of artists who have things going on with their eyes. And there's an artist, Yoran Dotan, who has oh, now I can't think of what it's called, but his work is about that, and his paintings, and he was talking about doing a show, so I'll definitely, refer you, but it's really interesting that, you know, that because I have crossed eyes, and I have a lazy eye, and, you know, I wanted to be an architect, but I hate math, so that's kind of but that we're still pursuing that career, you know, art, whether it's painting or drawing, that nobody thinks that we could do because we can't see, but then we find other ways to be expressive, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So I know that's what I love about your story, for sure, and especially the performative aspect of it. You know, whether you can't see at all, that's still a part of who you are, which is really cool.
Well, and because I couldn't see, I was struggling academically. I just couldn't see the board in school, so I was trying to find something else to do that I could be successful at, and that's how I found pageantry. I did well in pageantry, partly because I couldn't see the audience, and like I can't see most of your faces, so like no one could be here, and I'd be like, oh. So I did well because I wouldn't get nervous.
Yeah. Yeah, so you don't have to think about the audience naked.
Yeah, no. Just can't see them.
Yeah.
I used to have to give like talks in school. I remember I would take off my glasses so that I couldn't see anybody. Like, it doesn't exist.
They were like that. Although now that I'm getting older, I actually have to take off my glasses to see.
Yeah.
It's changing. It's like, oh my God. So I guess let's go into the installations, and tell me about the installations and what your thought process was creating them. Let's start with you, Catherine.
Well, the closet space is very small, and I kind of went into the installation in a roundabout way. I had a different idea, and then came and visited the closet and realized it's so tiny. And at the same time, I had an idea to do a wanted to interview a love doll. So I bought one on Amazon and I didn't realize it was so small. I thought it was a big love doll, but it came in the mail and it was tiny, and when I pulled it out, it reminded me immediately of a baby doll. And so when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do in the closet, I was researching love dolls, and they were talking about the size is so small because people like to hide it in their closet so that no one else knows where it is.
And so people understand, what is a love doll?
So a love doll is a doll that looks, they have men and women, but the one that I have is a woman doll, and it has a butthole, it has a vagina, it has large breasts. This one that I have has no head, arms, or legs, so it's really just a torso used for sex, pretty much. And what I find really interesting about my work is I deal with objectification for women, and this is like the essence of objectification for women, is paring them just down to their physical, sexual features. So I was, the baby doll installation, I wanted to take it back to an innocent place where I had baby dolls when I was younger, and trying to figure out a way to understand why a love doll even exists. And so I took the love doll and took the baby doll parts and tried to make it into a baby doll and not a love doll anymore.
And how do you think, like, were you successful in that as far as like your feelings about it, or?
It was really interesting. I don't think I was successful in trying to transform it into an innocent doll like I was expecting it to be. When I was doing the performance, I was literally cutting off its breasts and sewing up its vagina, so there was a violence to it that I didn't expect to have a negative reaction. I didn't enjoy turning the love doll into the baby doll. Yeah, even though the motivation was from an innocent place, to get there it felt very violent. That even though it was a love doll and I wanted to change it so that it wasn't, the purpose was not only just for sex, but for actual love, the violence in it was disturbing to me as I was doing it to this.
That's a whole other level to objectification.
Oh, yeah.
You know, definitely. Cool, Shelley.
So it's how it came about, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so, yeah, your thought process in creating this new work.
I feel like, I think I woke up one day and was like, I want to make a giant paper doll. And I can't exactly remember if like the thought was fleshed out or not, but as that started evolving, it was like, okay, well, what are the pieces? And it was important to me that they weren't focused on clothing, that it was more focused on like body parts or pieces that evoked that, like a change in our body and ourselves to reflect body image and how we look at ourselves as women. And I was constantly doing this thing of like reflecting back to what my personal experience is with that, and then trying to relate it to like a wider understanding of like the women that I know. And so a lot of that came through like kind of Instagram and stuff. So not necessarily women that I know, but them pushing it out farther. So like the prosthetic leg is kind of from this girl that I follow on Instagram who's a boxer. And so that was kind of just me kind of trying to stretch, like, what are these things? Is it about strength? Is it about sexuality? Is it about beauty? Is, you know, anything that I could think of, religion? There's so many places where women are put into certain roles and boxes that I just had this endless ability to come up with different pieces that could fit into this paper doll that is like me and everyone at the same time. And then I liked the idea of being able to layer those, because there really is no end to that combination of how we can kind of continue to think about those ideas.
And then bringing the audience, you know, and letting them play with it and layer it. box, or, you know, like placing the MAGA hat on, you know, you or your head or your mom, or, you know, things like that is, you know, is even, you know, deeper and more fascinating too.
Well, it was really important to me to not have any answers. Like, I feel like I'm constantly asking these questions, and that lead to more questions, and like that's what's really interesting to me. And so I think adding in the viewer audience participation is a way of like evoking more questions. And then they put the hijab and the leg, and they were like, now all of a sudden we're talking about like a war zone. Mm-hmm. And that was just not something that had ever really, you know, like it wasn't like it wasn't there, but the way that they put it was not something that I had consciously thought of. And so I thought that was really interesting, just this way that we look at our world and we look at what we're told on how to be a lady. And I have all these ideas of where I'm putting this, and then somebody else comes in and they bring their perspective to it. And now that reflexively goes back to like, okay, now how does that affect how I think about myself again? So.
And where did the title come from? Be a lady.
It was something that Dad used to say, probably when I was doing something like burping or like running around like in my underwear or something. I don't know what but it'd be like, oh, be a lady. And I just like, you know, like I remember like, I don't know what the concept, but at some point as I got older, I could just like hear this phrase in my head, and I was like, yeah, like there was no instruction to that. It just, you just weren't doing it right, you know? And I feel like there's like, it's just a thing that like, my personality has come to be the same, like whatever, I'm not doing it right, but this is what I know how to do. But when you think about it, it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? And it means something different in everybody's family, and everybody's, maybe what their religion is very important to doing that, or whatever it is. But it seems to me that it's always like a negative thing, or like a you're doing it wrong, as opposed to this is how you're supposed to do it. Which what is supposed to, I don't know. Questions.
Exactly. So what, for both of you, I mean, and you kind of, and actually you did answer this, what prompted you to use the dolls in your work? So, hello. So how have your installations here been informed by previous work? Like Sheli, you did Send Me Your Selfie, and you know, you've done quite a few different performances on beauty, and so kind of, yeah, tell me about that.
So, I feel like it's kind of a lot about being maybe just always looking at myself, like this narcissism of something, of like making portraits about myself, and then trying to reflect this thing of constantly looking inward, like that everybody does it. And so the Send Me Your Selfie was the thing that I asked people to send me their selfies, and then I would paint them. And so it was this thing that like they got to present who they are, but I had the final say in how I paint this portrait. And so it was like a way to interact with people, but again, it's kind of like looking at how people see themselves, and then how I see what they're presenting to me. And so I think this was just kind of another way to look inward and outward at the same time through paint. And I just like to paint, so that's kind of like the meditation on it, is that I think that those things, those ideas can just be thought through as I'm thinking, which is another aspect of that. But yeah, I think that just kind of about like reviewing who you are as a person.
Which we're always doing. Catherine.
So the previous performances that I've done, usually they're about the body. There's one I did with a drag queen, and I came in my pageant gear, my corset and Spanx, and he came in his drag gear, and then we switched outfits. And so I think all my performances about the body. I had my honeymoon in Japan, and we were walking around and ended up randomly, it was like a coffee shop, and then we randomly ended up in a sex store. And it was like totally, how did we get here? And I was very intrigued because they had these life-looking dolls. And so I feel like a lot of my performances have to do with body, but then they also have to deal with how I life as I'm going. So being in the sex store, looking at these women dolls and just being shocked by them. Or in Japan, we went to a maid cafe, which was another performance I did. And in a maid cafe, you go in and everything is pink, everything is cute, and these maids are in maid outfits, and they call you master, and I was a princess. But they do little dances for you, and it's very, very odd. So I did another performance where I kind of played with gender and brought in my brothers to be maids, and they would go up to people and say, "Oh, master, can you take a photo with me?" And it was just very disturbing, but back to the body and how we relate and how we're seeing gender and dealing with the body. This is I think my first performance where I've actually not had another person with me, but having a actual object. But it was so weird because I felt like it was an actual person, like it was a body that I was reacting with.
Wow. So Sheli, or I guess talk about your Send Me Your Selfie project a little more. You had people send you the, images of themselves. How, and I guess you probably answered this a little bit, but how did it deal with identity and, and like our social media culture and, kind of the narcissism, that we've talked about, and especially in relation to this project?
Well, I think that goes into the idea that, like, everybody always likes to kind of talk crap on selfies and, like, this whole, like, oh, the millennials are obsessed with their selfies and they're narcissistic and this whole thing. And so, like, maybe, but also who cares? To me, it was like this way of, like, I guess kind of documenting who these people are, and again that idea of that they get to present who they are, but then it's also what I see. So it's a constant thing that we're just doing in real life. Is I'm always going to present to you what I think that I want people to see, but I don't have any control over what they actually see. And so I kind of felt that by like asking people to do this online, then it's kind of this way of like seeing these communities that we form on Facebook or Instagram, where we are presenting ourselves with one visual image. And it might be one visual image a day or 6 a day, but like you break it down into this one piece, and then I can take it and paint it and think about it. I might pull something else out of it that they never thought was there. Or maybe it wasn't there, I don't know, but it was just kind of a nice way for me to make this collection of identity of how people are presenting themselves, because it was their choice. And then, you asked one more part that made me think of something and it's gone.
About the narcissism of social media, or because you also
because I also stole them. That was the other aspect. That was why I wanted to go to. So like I was finding as people were sending them to me that I was getting this like maybe I was seeing a pattern in what people were sending, because it was what like now all of a sudden when I asked you to send a selfie, you're thinking about it. Whereas before, because it became this kind of cultural thing that people just do, they kind of weren't thinking about it. Maybe there were cues that they had learned from seeing other selfies or something, but it was a little bit more natural. So then I just started kind of like pulling through and being like, oh, I just like that. And throwing them in there because they had already put it out online. It was this, it was this place where it's out to the public. It's a way that you presented yourself to a community that you decided to be part of by doing this. So yeah, still wouldn't get rid of it.
Great. And Catherine, the Miss Art World moniker, like how did that, I know, it came from the history of you being in beauty pageants, but how did you bring that into the art world? I mean, how did that transition happen?
I was doing a performance in Art Basel last year, and people kept saying, oh yeah, you are the beauty queen artist. And I had nothing to do with Miss Art World, thought it up or anything. There was just, they knew that I was a past pageant person, and that's how they identified with me. And it was enough to be like, hey, I think I should maybe bring in the pageant piece more, because for a long time, pageants aren't always taken or seen positively. And so for a long time with my art, it was in my statement, but it wasn't solely about, I wasn't presenting myself as, hey, I used to be in pageants, and this is what my work was all about. But people just picked up on that, and that's what it stuck. So when I came home, I was talking to, I think, my husband, and well, like, let's think about how we can make the pageantry, because I critique pageantry, but I also want to bring an element of positivity. So when I was thinking about the sash and Miss Art World, I wanted to have a statement where when you're competing in a pageant, you feel amazing when you win and you feel terrible when you lose, because you are now comparing yourself to the women around you. And once you win, you feel, I have the right to wear this sash because someone else chose me and said I was the prettiest, I was the smartest of the group. And so I wanted to tap into that and use the Miss Art World and say, no one gave me this title, it's self-elected. I want to say to other women that you don't have to be given something to say that I have a right to feel beautiful, or I have a right to, wear whatever I want to wear. So it's really me trying to say to women and myself, because most of the time I look in the mirror, I'm like, oh man, I do not look good today, I feel fat, and then I have to remember what my artwork is about, and it's about feeling beautiful all the time, no matter what. If you have makeup on, if you don't, and making a statement for it. So the Miss Art World title is trying to give myself confidence and other women confidence around me to not have to be reassured by other people that they're beautiful and valued and worthy of the title.
That's awesome. Have you seen Dana Title's work?
Yeah,
she shows. Yeah,
I just
you
met
guys
her
are
the other day
together. Definitely. Which actually goes into my next question. Who are your influences? Like art related, culturally? Kind of besides the beauty pageant. But have you looked at other performance artists, or painters, or other feminists? Kind of who are your influences? And Kath, go ahead.
So I have a list at home, and I'm terrible with names. So I'll be like that one artist that I really, really like. Apart from the people that we all know, Cindy Sherman, Marina, there's some local artists that I really like. There's an artist in New York who dresses up like a dunce, and her performance is interacting with people, which is really interesting. I have a list, I swear.
I feel like I'm gonna kind of do
right?
the same thing when it comes out, like the name.
Yeah, the name. Like that artist that did that thing.
But I feel like for me, also, like the women that I know and see every day, I think I'm like collecting interests, like my friends, and I look at the way that they handle this body that they're in, and how, like, as a group, it's kind of fun when you get like a group of women together. There's this like automatic of like, oh no, you're so cute, but I feel fat, or whatever. Like this thing that we do that's just like ridiculous, and so it's kind of become this like game for me to watch and see how we all do it, and like I play with myself in those same things. Like, so there's certain things that, like, so everybody shaves, and like, oh my god, I didn't shave today, you guys. Like, everybody's looking at their ankles or something. And so like I stopped shaving my armpits for like a year, because I thought every time I'd see myself in the mirror, I'd be like, oh, that's disgusting, like. And so it was this thing of like teaching myself to not think that my body was disgusting the way it was naturally done. But that came from looking at people that I know. And so I feel like that's the thing that inspires me the most, is just the people that I meet. And then pushing that outward into social media is a big influence for me, I think visually it's a wonderful place to just see how people are presenting themselves, and verbally, like how they're describing themselves as well. You go back to the girl, the boxer, like this is, everybody has a platform now to do this, and so it's really fun to see how like they self-brand, and how that relates to who they are as a woman specifically.
Well, you both inspire me, that's for sure. So kind of a general question. How do you feel your work fits into like the current contemporary feminist conversation? If you want to call it feminist, because there's talk about that. You know, there's somebody that calls it womanist, or, you know, whether it's intersectional feminism, or, you know, where do you see your work kind of in that conversation? And either one.
I think that's like a giant, it feels big, like that feels like a really big question.
It is.
And I don't know if I feel confident to say like where I place myself. I think I try to go back to what I'm doing specifically. And so like if I'm talking about myself and I'm relating it to other people that I know in a way that hopefully people can relate to themselves, then I hope I fit somewhere in there, you know? But I think it's a hard thing to fit here, you know? I don't know.
I think where feminism is at the moment, at least from my perspective, because I was always in the beauty pageant world, there's a perception that pageant women can't be feminists. And so I kind of had that in my mind for a long time, because there was a perception that to be a feminist you had to be like this. And I was like this, so I couldn't be like this. Like, if you like makeup and high heels and like to, you know, wear a fancy gold gown, which I do, you can't be a feminist. And so I think what's interesting right now is people are saying, no, that's wrong. You can like all these other things and still be a feminist. You can enjoy putting on makeup as long as you're not addicted to or feel like you need it to be beautiful. You can play with it and play with your style. That doesn't mean that you're addicted to being beautiful. You can still be a feminist and look a certain way and wear high heels and a push-up bra and still believe in what feminism or feminists believe in.
I think it's something that you said earlier, like it's about where's your validation coming from. And I think that at least what I'm seeing with the community that I'm interacting with is a big focus is validating ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so if I can be so bold as to say that that's a statement of feminism now, I think that's somewhere that I want to fit.
Yeah.
Like self-representation and self-validation and being able to label myself however I want to, whether it's wearing makeup or not wearing makeup, or, you know, being a lady or not being a lady, whatever that means, you know?
Yeah, very true.
But like figuring it out for yourself and being able to change my mind if I want to.
I think about Rebecca Niederlander, who's an artist, in an art talk for something totally unrelated. She said the phrase, think globally, act locally. And I think about that in relation to everything now, including like feminism. And we do have to focus on what we can, like what we're part of, you know, individually, and what we can do to whether it's change that or be part of the conversation, or so, you know, which is exactly what you guys said, which, you know, I think is a great place to be, you know, right now, for sure. So just the final question, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience. Do you have any projects or shows coming up? You know, new work that you want to talk about, or new performances, or Sheli, do you want to?
I want to expand this.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. It's called Second Skins, and they're doing a one-night performance night. So there's a performance artist in each room. So there's going to be tons of performance artists. And I'm doing a performance called the Icarus Complex. I won't tell you too much about it because once you come see it, but it should be very interesting. I've been swimming in glitter because I have so much glitter that's going into this performance, but it'll be good.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. Are there questions from the audience?
I want to know, I didn't get to go to the opening, so is that you there? I was wondering, do you want to identify them or not?
Yeah, this one's me. That one's based off of me.
I thought it was okay.
And then this one's based off of my mom.
Okay.
So it was kind of like that idea that we all become our parents, and specifically in relation to gender roles, like what does that mean for you? First, each for me, but you could put yourself there too, So yeah, the other one's that's Princess Diana.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, everything is kind of based off of either people that I've met or found online or in my life somehow.
Princess Diana, you were saying you were going to do one about a princess.
Well, no, okay, so no, I was looking for something that could represent like a wedding.
Oh, that's
Classic,
Yeah.
where do we end up? We get married. And so I was like, okay, the ring, but the ring is small, and a veil is more dramatic. And so as I was looking up veils, I kept finding Princess Diana, and she's a princess. The princess, the wedding. I had this flash of being a little kid and watching everybody went nuts for her wedding. It was on TV and in the dress, and they're talking about it. I don't know, I was little, so I don't have any, but I just remember how nuts everybody was for it. And so it's this classic thing of you're supposed to, you want to be a princess, and she's the people's princess, and how everybody had opinions about her, whether she was good enough or not good enough, but then everybody loved her anyway. So I just felt like she had a lot of layers to her.
I think your choice of her is so interesting because her trajectory of her life brought her to one of the most rebellious role models we've seen.
Yeah,
Well, I think that's
This
what, yeah.
passive princess to this completely rebellious, iconoclastic person.
Well, I think that's what she eventually stuck out to me. Why she stuck out to me, because it's the rebelliousness that I think sparked something for me.
And do you feel that your work in pageantry, you're sort of rebelling in a way? I mean, you're funny, it's so witty, I love it.
Yeah. Pageant women are very nice to me because they're like, oh, you're that weird, weird things. And they're supportive because they're like, you're doing pageant stuff, but then I have a dress I made that's nude and it has glittery nipples and what is it called?
Uterus?
A uterus, outlined, and my pageant women that I'm friends with were like, we just don't understand. I know there's a statement, but I definitely don't fit into the pageant box, and sometimes I don't feel like I fit into the art world box because they're like, you're a pageant, but it's interesting to be in both places.
Have you seen the movie on Netflix with Jennifer Aniston? What is it? Yes.
Yeah.
Dublin? Yeah. That's fascinating. I mean, it's great. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Any other questions?
So I missed the opening. Are you able to move the pieces around? Is it interactive? And if so, how did they stay in such beautiful condition?
Yeah.
What did you do to your paper?
There's gloves over there,
Oh, okay.
and if you would like to play with them, you have to put on the lady gloves.
Okay.
No
Okay.
gloves,
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have to be gentle. So
Okay.
I'm basically putting a lot of trust in everybody.
Yeah. So you didn't coat it with anything?
These are just
Color?
watercolor on paper.
Water? Really?
And I really, because it was about the paper doll, I wanted it to be very, that it's paper.
And so it
I
gets
wanted
used,
that.
and if there's a
Yeah.
grip, it's I remember using my paper dolls, and I in a day,
Yeah.
rip them to shreds from my over exuberance, and
I might watch you a little bit.
yeah, I will not touch them.
That's also one of the things in expanding the project. I want to figure out getting them printed and something that like I can kind of put it out into a wider audience where I don't have to watch a couple of these are my originals and stuff, but for here, for this place.
This
That's a good idea.
This time, really, I just started teaching elementary kids, and we, as we raise our fresh generation, and my children, two that are under 12, this whole idea of gender and how fluid it is just such a brilliant idea to bring to an interactive classroom where they can each pull something from it and say, this is who I am, and it's so poetic and so gentle. I can definitely see this in the classroom. It's beautiful.
We kind of like have them make their own.
Make their own.
Make collectively.
Collectively.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
Put together a curriculum.
Yeah, totally. Artist, visiting artist.
Yep. When we're done, which I think we're just about done, we'll clean up the chairs and then you guys can play. They're on magnets, and so that's how so you can like kind of slide them off really easily,
Yeah,
and then attach them to the different magnets on the body. So and mix and match and play. So and then Catherine has a video playing of the performance in the closet. So definitely check that out. And here, Caitlin is going to be doing the residency next here at Shoebox Projects, and Heather Lowe is going to have the closet.
So excited. This is like some tying into what I want to do in a way too. So
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Well, identity. So.
But any more questions? Oh,
I just
yeah.
have a couple comments. I noticed during the opening on yours that it was interesting what people were putting up there and changing, and then you kind of look at them too and you're like, yeah, that fits their personality. And it was interesting how they were showing that through what you were able to have, and also doing the interactive. I thought that was really a genius way to have people react with your artwork and do that. As you expand though, it'd be interesting though eventually in the future on technology changing and how they're going to integrate artificial intelligence and with body parts that's going to be replacing possibly ours in the future. And how we would, as a society, start reacting to that much more negative than what you see here.
Yeah.
Especially based on religious base, as far as, with the 666 and all that sort of stuff, and people freak out with chips in you and stuff like that, and how that is progressively going that direction. So that'd be really interesting. And then yours, I thought was interesting, how during your performance really didn't end, even though your performance ended in the closet, when you came out with the baby, and then you were trying to pass that on. It was like hot potato. A lot of them didn't want to touch it, or when they did, they couldn't believe how real it felt with the material that you used. So I thought that was interesting too.
The
Good job,
passing
guys.
it around is not. I should have had it,
I do remember I was having a conversation with somebody and all of a sudden I had a baby.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, we're still having the conversation. I got a baby now, you guys. Like, this is new.
And I didn't want it.
Nobody wanted it. You just kind of had to like forcefully pass it to somebody.
And it didn't really
Just
feel
kind
like
of a comment in
it didn't really feel like
itself.
a doll either, because it had mass to it. You
Yeah.
kind of weight, and it was kind of spongy a little
I
bit.
kept like patting its bottom. This is not a real baby.
You probably got to console. Maybe it was the violence that accidentally had, that you were feeling. It was like, I'm sorry.
I want to say something. I was planning to see it today, to come here, and last night I have a granddaughter. She's 6 years old. I have her mother, very feminist, We were watching, first time in my life, I watched with her. She told me 5 times, the movie Frozen. I don't know if you saw it. I was shocked. My granddaughter, 6 years old, Lassel Range, she was Elsa. And she was blonde. She added blonde. And she's moving. And I was like, those, nowadays, this movie was not done 20, 30 years ago. And her mother doesn't notice. This is Barbie's, or this Elsa, and that one, and all the boobs, and everything so skinny, and I'm thinking, she will not be blonde. She will not be. And it's so important talking about, you were saying you're a teacher at school, not only for us as adults, for kids, to really, it educates me as a mother and as a human being. And it's really, I'm so happy that I came here and listened to you because it's so important, I believe. So for the younger generation, for all the generation. So thank you. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you so much. And there's some water and cookies in the kitchen too. So I hope there's all the cookies.